Welcome to Changing the Conversation. This podcast explores the mix of diversity, culture and tech innovations in our industry. Join us as we sit down with trailblazers, thought leaders and innovators who are reshaping the landscape of insurance, bringing you stories that redefine the narrative. We are your guide to the evolving landscape of insurance. This is Changing the Conversation, brought to you by Mackay.
Donna, welcome to Changing the Conversation. I am super excited to be talking to you. I know we've done an online podcast before, but I follow your journey with Carpenters, and I'm very excited to have you here.
Oh, thank you very much for inviting me. It's great to be here.
Well, it's a bit different today. We're going to do something a little bit different at the end that I'll be doing in 3 podcasts only. And that is inviting my daughter to ask you some questions, because I really want to know from her perspective about the mentoring. I want to know a bit more about how you do it and how you engage, because your story is really quite powerful. And I've listened to Anthony O'Brien's podcast and I thought it was phenomenal. My 2 favourite takeaways from that were: kindness is free, spread that shit everywhere. It's going to be a caption I'm going to use with my children forevermore. And I also liked when I think the conversation was around children. We teach children to fail and what that does to build resilience. So I'm kind of interested to build on your personal story into how that is reflected in Carpenters, because it's very much a by choice, isn't it? So I wonder if you can tell me a little bit about your journey with the idea of fairness and kindness from a business perspective. Deliberately open, vague question.
Yeah, no, it's very much, it's John and I who own it and run it. It's 30 years old this year. Although I was involved, it was from a distance for 3 years, so I'm 27 years. But John has obviously worked in previous businesses before that. In particular, he was in a pure male partnership. I think it was like 26 male partners or something. And he wanted to see things done differently. He thought, this is not really working. I want to do things differently. And that's why he set up on his own. Then I'd worked in London, Newcastle, then London, a couple of big firms in London. And I kind of saw how things were done wrong, or things from my perspective that were done wrong. And I thought it was kind of like a meeting of hearts and minds with John and I, because we thought, well, if we're going to do this, we can, make sure it's a reflection of us. Our background, the fact that we're self-made, the fact that it could be quite powerful, and it is quite powerful to have your own business, because you can shape things, you can change things. We can, employ people like us. We can make it easier for people like us to get on. And I think we both kind of said at the beginning that we wanted it to be a very customer-focused business. I mean, people said to me, especially doing motor claims in Merseyside, where I started, that it was a saturated market. And I was mad, and there were some big firms around that area who were, doing a lot of that work. How could I break in? And I think for me and John, our view was, well, if you do it well, there's always room for you and there's always a place. So we're going to give it a go.
I'm always really intrigued by this, because if you go to any kind of brand consultant or a business consultant, and they make you do those tests, don't they, about what words resonate with you. Now, what words resonate with me will differ depending on the time of day, the time of month, how I got out of bed, all that kind of stuff. And I really struggle to find that key core value that never changes and isn't and feels very, very core. Do you know what I mean? How have you gone about doing that?
I know. And we didn't do any of that consultant business. We didn't do any training. We didn't do anything. We literally, John started it for 3 years. It was a niche commercial practice with about 5 people. I rocked up with no work from London to obviously to Merseyside. And it is mad. I mean, really, we couldn't write a book, could we? Because we couldn't really explain that. And there's no kind of, rules and regulations. But I think for me, and I say it a lot, and I'm sure people are, I don't think they're bored with it, because I think anyone who knows them really loves them. But I think it was just a great meeting of 2 people who had very similar backgrounds, very similar values. We both have quite a good sense of humour. And I think for me, I mean, John's very determined and he's very like, this is going to work. I'm not like that really. I mean, I didn't think it was going to work. And my way out always with anything that I've done, like moving to England, moving from Newcastle to London, is if it doesn't work, I'll go back. You know, nobody died, I'll go back. So I always gave myself that out. John would never do that. He's very determined and probably more entrepreneurial than me really. But I think for me going in, and I was talking to someone about this yesterday, I was with a group of mentors, and I realised by chatting to them that I always had this big picture mentality. You know, and it's there. I don't know where it comes from, but it's there. And I think probably from my dad, really. It's that thing. So when I went into Carpenters and I was setting up procedures and there was 5 of us, I wasn't doing it with 5 people in mind. I was doing it with like 50 people in mind.
And now you've got 1,500.
Yeah. So I think subconsciously, I probably am more entrepreneurial than I think I am. And I think because I had an Aussie guy working for me early on and he used to laugh at me. And he goes, do you know there's only 10 of us? And you're acting like, you know, we're Clifford Chance. And I'm going, well, you know, you have to be prepared and you've got to, I always thought it had to be scalable. And I suppose because I'd done motor work in London, I knew that if you got a contract, it could bring a lot of work in one go. You know, winning one contract could be a couple of 100 cases a month. So you had to be prepared. So I suppose I was thinking it bigger because of my motor experience and I knew that a contract could be big. So it wasn't like winning 2 cases, it could be quite a lot. So I was always kind of preparing for that.
And it sounds like you and John, like you've said, is just the dream meeting, the absolute connection where something works. And I know there's ups and downs in every walk of life, but when you've got that meeting of hearts and minds, personal and professional, I think that's phenomenal. Have you got any particular example of I don't know, an unfair practice or something that you've seen, maybe in your London world, when you came to John and said, this is what we don't do, so we need to do something else?
Yeah, I think, you know, you can imagine in London and you're in expensive offices and the big overheads are huge and there was an awful lot of focus on money and earning money and, you know, putting money on the ledger and all that sort of stuff and on the files. So, you know, I kind of felt like sometimes the customer focus was a bit lost. And for me, one of the things that John and I decided early on was that we wanted to be really good at what we did and we want to try and be proud of what we did and the way that we did it and the way that we achieved it. And you know what's funny is you make money. So the money came because, you know, as we grew and our reputation grew, you got more work. And then, you know, customers were happier, so they'd refer you. And so I think for me, I didn't see that in my previous jobs. I just thought it was too money focused. Whereas I think we were very customer focused and then the money came, which was quite nice. And I mean, you need the money to run the business. But I think if you set out your values and how you're going to look after your customers, and we invested in technology really early on. And I think for me as well, John backed some of my ideas, which were quite expensive, you know, like getting technology when you've no work and no money was obviously, you know, but I found I found that I could finance it. So I said to John, we can actually finance it. And it's funny because he said, you're making it sound like it's free. Even on finance, you've got to pay the monthly payments. And I said, no, I know that. But by the time they kick in, we will have some work. And then we'd be able to pay. And, you know, so I suppose I did obviously must have believed in it to a certain extent. But for me, if you're going to do volume work, which we were, you couldn't do that without technology. And the sad thing for me in London was there was a lot of technology and they spent a lot of money on it, but it didn't work. You know, there was no training, there was no in-house team to help you. So it was a kit on your desk that didn't do anything. You might as well have had a word processor. And
you pay an awful lot of money every month for that kit that no one's using properly.
And we're having to earn more money and deliver more money to pay for the tech that doesn't work and doesn't add anything to the customer journey. So I really knew we needed tech 27 years ago, and I really knew that we had to invest in that if we were going to go forward. And, you know, that's been one of the best decisions that we ever made, obviously.
Who's more risk averse out of you and John?
I'm more risk averse than him.
Are you?
Yeah, that's why I think he's more of an entrepreneur. You know, he'll have a go at something. I'm a bit like, ooh. And I think we've very much kept to what we know and we're quite niche. And that's probably down to me more than him. I think we'd have branched out into other things if he'd had his way. Whereas I'm kind of like, no, I want to be really good at this. And we have expanded in certain ways, but it's very much around the core product. It's that motor claim, isn't it? And we've done the FNL and the claims handling, the fault, non-fault, all of that. But it's all around the same product. I mean, we do home now as well. But I just think it's probably I'm more cautious in that sense. But yeah, he'll push me. And he does.
I think that's the best partnership, where you both push each other and rein each other in when it's needed. I'm the one always being reined in, and I'm always pushing my husband. So he's the more risk averse out of the two of us. Right. It's funny because I started off my career wanting to be a barrister, and I did a law degree. I did the bar vocational course, and I worked as an asylum and immigration lawyer for quite a few years, and I absolutely loved it. But when the charity I worked for asylum legal aid was cut, I went to work for a solicitor's office, and I remember having to write down every 6 minutes that I'd done in a day. Yeah. So went to the toilet 3.5 minutes, made a coffee 3.5 minutes. That's 7 minutes. What do I do with the next 5? Like that. Yeah. And I remember having to do that because you had your certain targets. And you're right. You end up getting lost in. It all becomes about the 6 minutes and not about, can I make this witness statement the best that I can? I need to get more evidence, or I need to. So I totally hear you on that, and I love that you guys have taken something, actually, like before it became fashionable. You know, before it was a thing to talk about employee welfare and things like that. I think it's amazing. Over the last 27, 30 years, how have you adapted your approach to fairness? And, you know, what's gone wrong? Where have you been bitten on the bum and gone, whoa, that did not work? And then how's that happened?
Yeah, I always say, like, we've got more right than wrong, thankfully, or we wouldn't be here. So that's good. But we have made mistakes along the way. And I always say, you know, we're kind of got this reputation now because of our our quality stats and, you know, our stance on social mobility. And I suppose because it's been going for years and years, people accept it and they think, and they know it's real and they know that we live it. But you still get things wrong and you're not perfect. And I think the thing for me as a business owner, that brings a huge responsibility. And I never felt it more keenly than in COVID, you know, when they all went home. And the work stopped because, you know, nobody was driving. So there was no new incoming work. We had a lot of existing work to do, and we did do other things like calls and things. But, you know, there was no new work coming in, and we had a certain amount of people that needed work. So that was terrifying. And I think it's a very big responsibility. Luckily, being Irish, I can kind of, you know, tamper that down a little bit and not let it like drag me down and make me worry all the time. But it is a big responsibility. So I think, you know, when I'm looking at it and when I'm talking to people at business conferences and things, I always say, look, you know, there's two things you have to juggle, and that is you've got to get work in, you've got to make sure the overheads are paid and the wages are paid, and you've got to make a profit, and you've got to have good technology, and you've got to innovate and have people that are innovating. That you're not paying them to do anything really other than to look forward. So there's a lot of people who you have to pay and who have to work for you. But you do want to look after your people. And I think you do want to do things right because it is a reflection of you. I mean, there's no way John and I could say Carpenters is not ours. And if it was anything bad about it, then it's a reflection on us. You know, so I think, and the other thing for us, which is great, is the people we've brought in to help run it, and the people who are on the board, and, you know, our CEO and that. I mean, they've ran with that. They know how important that is, and it's important to them. We've chosen people who have that same ethos and that same belief, because otherwise it wouldn't work. So I think it's I think you have to live it, but I think you've got to balance. I mean, my biggest worry when COVID hit was, oh my God, I don't want to make anybody redundant. You know, bad enough that you're in a pandemic, you don't want to lose your job. You know, luckily John is very good with money, and he's very careful, and he doesn't like relying on banks too much. He doesn't really. He says they're great when you don't need them, but they're terrible when you need them. So we've reinvested, and we've never ever spent all the money, you know. And we see some of the money that we make is to run the business and to go back in. So luckily, we had a lot of meat on the bones when COVID hit, and we could take it and we could spend that money and make sure that everybody was all right and that we could keep going and we could look after people. But, you know, it really kind of exposed those people who hadn't reinvested who were living, you know, day to day and hand to mouth. And I think, you know, it was such a terrifying time that for me, it really was the toughest time in business, when I was scared, you know, and the responsibility felt enormous.
You've just mentioned that you have the ability to kind of turn off and not worry about something all the time. I do not have that ability.
No.
That ability to compartmentalize. My husband has it.
So is John.
I don't have it. So stuff leaks out.
Yeah.
is how I describe it. Is it something you've always had? You mentioned being Irish, so you've got it. Is it something you've had to learn and build through like tough experiences?
Yeah, I would say that I mean, being Irish, I'm from Dublin. I think I have a natural, you know, sure, it'll be all right. You know, there's that, you know, that thing, sure, feck it, it'll be all right. So there is that kind of, I was brought up in that way.
Could we call this podcast, sure,
Sure,
feck
it,
it'll
you know,
be all right?
What the hell, you know, like, so I think there is that in me. And we have a very irreverent outlook on life. So, you know, and I think the other thing I've begun to realise, and maybe from podcasts, I think, because it makes you reflect, doesn't it, and think about yourself, is I'm kind of a solution person. So when something goes wrong, I kind of think, instead of going, oh my God, I need to lie on the floor and drink 6 bottles of wine and scream, I kind of go, how are we going to fix this? And there's other two things. John can switch off. He's like you, and he's a compulsive worrier. And it's horrible to see someone that you really love in that kind of cycle. The other thing is, you know, my mum suffers really badly from mental illness, and a lot of her problems were anxiety and worry. I mean, she'd worry how somebody looked at her. You know, that would cause her to have a whole bad day if somebody looked crooked at her. So I think I did train myself a bit because of that experience with her, because I thought, you know, that could make you ill. Well, it didn't make her ill. So I did kind of consciously think about that. But I do think I have that natural, and I like, it's easy to make me laugh. You know, like, no matter how down I am, I do like a laugh. I love a dance. So I can kind of put the music on and forget. And I think I've talked in the past about when I had the boys, because I had them later, you know, I would take weekends off, even when we were, you know, the business probably needed us 7 days a week. I kind of said, well, come Friday evening till Monday morning, I'm down, because I want time with the boys. I don't want to miss this. John is not as great at doing that. And you know, you're talking about you want to say things. I've said this before, like, we'd be driving into work on the Monday morning and it would spurt out all this stuff that he'd bottled up for the weekend. I'm sure he took notes somewhere, you know, by the way. And I'd think, when did you think about that? And he'd be like, you know, Friday evening, Saturday morning at the rugby, you know. And I was like, Jesus Christ. So I think it is a gift. I know that I'm lucky to have it. And it has kept me sane, I think, you know, at times. And I remember my brother saying to me years ago when we were growing, you know, what's your wage bill? I said, I don't want to know. You know, because kind of John does the money, which is a bit bad, isn't it? But, you know, I didn't want to know, because I thought I can't be focused on that, because then I know how much I have to make each month to pay that, and then the rest and the rest. So I kind of just thought, no, let's focus on doing the work, getting work, and, you know, doing a good job. So, yeah, you know, don't look at those horrible bits.
Yeah, it's really tricky, isn't it? Because I am John.
Yeah.
And always at random moments, you know, we've got 3 young kids, so we get quiet 5 minutes, and all of this stuff comes out about, and it's all merged, business, kids, money, holiday, it's all merged.
Yeah.
And I'll flit from pillar to post, and Neil sometimes looks at me and goes, whoa.
Yeah. Where's that coming from?
Please.
Yeah.
Take a deep breath.
Yeah.
Count to 10. And pick one thing.
Yeah.
Like, okay, fine. And it's that focus that I think is really, really builds success. Being able to
complement
focus.
each other.
Yeah.
You know, I think it'd be bad. I mean, we are alike in some ways, but we're really not alike in other ways. And I think that helps. You know, and I think I hope I've chilled him out a bit. But then he's kind of really pushed me. You know, he's kind of saw potential in me and just kind of gone, you can do that. Go on and do it more and more. And I think someone having that belief in you is very powerful.
Having kind of a personal champion, I suppose.
Yeah.
How's that impacted how you run a business? So, I mean, you've got 1,500 employees, and your career journey has been championed by a constant in your life. Yeah. How's that changed things? Or
I think we try to do that in the business. I think, you know, we have the people who work with us care about people who work for us and together. And I think, we've got a lot of apprentices, we've got academies through the business. We try and nurture people and give them confidence. We try to run a no blame culture. I mean, I'm sure anyone from Carpenters listening to this would say it's not perfect, but you try to say, we get things wrong. No one means to, and we always beat ourselves up enough for having to get told off by somebody else. But so I think I hope that as a team, that's what we've done, and we've built that kind of situation where you feel like, yeah, people want me to do well here. I can have ambition here. They'll support me to, open doors and help me get trained and believe in myself. So I hope we've put that ethos through the business that I've kind of had from John. And I've got a great belief in him as well. He knows that. So, although he doesn't listen to all the stuff I do, obviously.
He should.
Maybe we'll get him to listen to this.
Yes.
But yeah, I think hopefully I feel it, and I'm really proud of the work that, our teams do around that area, with supporting people and mentoring and helping. And, when I look at our 50-50 stats, men and women, and I see great men and great women everywhere in the business, and they all get on great and they work together, I just think, yeah, must have done something right,
Absolutely. And I that's one of the things that always stands out to me through any, we did your Bieber recordings, and the conversations we've had with Carpenters Group is always about the diversity and talent, and it's not specific to a particular pool, but it's just worked out that you've got the best people in the best places, because there's been that ethos behind to let everybody grow, and I think it's absolutely wonderful. In your podcast with Anthony, you mentioned briefly, your 40-year-old self, your 50-year-old self, and you mentioned that the 60s are coming. And what advice? So I'm 41.
Right.
Give me advice to your 40-year-old self and then your 50-year-old self, and what kind of were your major lessons through those decades?
Well, the funniest bit is I thought I was older 40. Okay. And now that I'm in my 50s, I'm like, Jesus, I didn't realise how young I was at 40. But so, that's just human nature, isn't it? Because it's a big number. I think what I said to him, one of the things for me was when I reached 40, which is the big, 30, I was just qualifying as a solicitor. I was just finishing my studies. So that kind of felt I wasn't quite anywhere really by that point, other than I got that qualification. So when I got to 40, obviously I'd been working with John for about 7 years. I'd had the boys, so I had twins who were about 2. And I think for me, when I reached 40, and I wasn't happy about it, and I can't believe that now when I'm like staring at 60 down the line. I'm like, I think I kind of thought, am I happy with where I am, in the sense of, have I given it my best shot? And I kind of looked and I thought, yeah, because I was delighted I had the boys, because I realised being a mum was great. I loved being a mammy. And the career was great and I was really into it, but I realised that, I would have missed out on that, and it was for me. But you have to, as a woman, you have to think about that. And the business really couldn't afford for me to have them, because it was too early and we didn't have enough people around to support me being out. I wasn't out for that long actually, but so it was a big decision. It was kind of I think it was a really brave decision. John doesn't like brave because he thinks that, oh no, it was always going to work. You were always going to make it work, but I was brave. I was very scared about it. So I think at 40, I was glad that I'd done it. And I was back in the business, and the business was growing, and it was kind of going in the right direction. And I think the same when I got to 50. Again, it was a bit longer and a bit more successful. The boys were bigger and, seemed like they were okay, not too damaged by having me as a mammy. So I think they're the things for me, that those milestones, I kind of go, like, you're not there, but you're kind of like, I'm going in the right direction. I'm happy that I've, achieved some stuff and I've learned. And I haven't kind of sat back and waited for things to happen. I've kind of tried to push things happening to me. And I think for me as well, gratitude's really important. And I know people go, oh, the harder you work, the luckier you get. I know, I hear that all the time, but I still believe in breaks and luck as well. And I think I'm very grateful for the experiences. I was very grateful at 40 to have my own business and to have my boys and John and my family. So I think, and I think those kind of milestones are good stock take times. And also to say, what else do I want? You know, I'm not that great at like planning, in the sense I kind of just get my head down and keep going, and try to push myself. One of the things I've always done since I was young, and I don't remember not doing this, is I take every opportunity that comes. So if someone says, do you want to try that? I'm in. You know, and I know everybody doesn't have that kind of ethos or their outlook, and they can't do it maybe because it scares them. So I'm lucky. You know, I think I like to try things. You know, if you offered me, look, I'm sitting here with you now, I'll say yes to stuff. I mean, even, I suppose the very first podcast I did, you know, was the scariest. But I think I just like to try things. And I think it's like challenge yourself and pushing yourself out of your comfort zone.
I think do something that scares you every day is my my kind of little self motto. I can't say that I do it every day, but I do try, because life is so full. It's so full of opportunity and experience. And I often say to my husband, we're living in this box here. We could get out of it. There's a whole big world, wide world out of this box. We could do that. So I'm really fascinated by that kind of thinking. And I, like you, I'm a big picture thinker. I'm absolutely rubbish at planning. I mean, like, if my friend says, let's take the kids for a picnic, she will pack the picnic, because I will end up with 3 pieces of bread and 1 slice of ham, and nobody knows
Dry
why we
bread.
have. Yeah, exactly, and it's dreadful. But if I think about it from a strategic point of view, then actually I'm quite good, because I can go, here's where we want to be, this is where we are, what are the steps to take us there? I just need somebody to help me along with those steps, because often I can't quite make that bit on my own.
No, I could relate to that. I can relate to that. I mean, I'm better in a business situation than in the kitchen, you know, or any of that. I'm not domesticated. And, you know, I went to convent school where that's all I learned was domestic duties. So I clearly didn't listen or get the memo. But so... and even with the boys, I was a bit embarrassed, you know, like, because I'm so bad. But, you know, we got by, and we get by. And I used to say sometimes, oh, thank God I'm not bad at my job, because I'm so bad at other things. But then, you know, that keeps your feet on the ground. You can't be great at everything, you know.
I'm going to take that and run with it. And what I think I'd like to do is I'd like to learn a little bit more about your mentoring, but I'd like to learn about it through the eyes of my 12-year-old daughter.
Okay.
And I am 100% sure she's going to ask you questions around cooking food, because I am not domesticated, cannot cook, and we have this whole big joke in the family, is mummy cooking dinner? Because then I'm going out.
Well, they say, is mummy heating dinner? Because mostly it's from Marks and Spencer's, and you just heat it up. So I used to say I'm cooking dinner, and the boys realise there's no cooking
There's
involved.
no cooking involved.
It's about, everything's pre-cooked and washed, and it's just, you know, but I pretend and put it together, and I
think my favourite moment was when I spent a really long time trying to cook a chicken breast to make it not dry, that I forgot to cook anything else.
Okay.
So I just served a plate with a really dry chicken breast, and I'm never allowed to forget that.
No, and I could easily do that. That sounds very normal to me.
Well, I'm very grateful, thank you. Okay, so I'm going to hand over to my daughter. She's got some questions for you.
Great.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Hi, Isabel.
What advice would you give me about the importance of the next 10 years of my life?
So what are you now?
I'm 12.
12 years old. I was just speaking to your mum earlier about opportunities, and I kind of look back on when I was your age, and I took opportunities even then. So if someone said to me, do you want to try that? I would try it, and I would give it a go to see if I liked it or not. The other thing for me is I loved meeting people, because I think they're interesting. And I mean, that's quite good for you today, isn't it? Because you can meet people, but you kind of learn from them, don't you? And you think, oh, that's interesting, or they say something. So I think kind of trying new things, meeting people, chatting to them, asking them questions is really good. And I think you learn from that. And I think that, listen, the other one that's really boring, and you're going to hate this one, I hate you, but working hard is good, because there is a result from that as well. So, you know, but I think that also that learning thing around just life learning you stuff is good as well. So not just about school work as well.
Thank you. How long did it take you to just actually properly start your business?
Well, I left school at 16, because really where I came from, it wasn't really, further education for women wasn't really seen as something important. And then I became a secretary. So then I studied law when I was about 22, because I decided I wanted to become a lawyer, and I didn't qualify till I was 30. So I did that in the evenings after work. So it kind of took me a long time. So one of the things when I'm talking to young people like you, and when I was talking to my boys, was I was saying, like, don't do it the way I did it, in the sense that it's it takes a long time, and it kind of eats into your working life and, you know, your spare time. So I kind of encourage younger people to go on into further education when they're younger, if they want to, and they like it. Another great thing is apprenticeships. You know, I think apprenticeships are great because you can kind of leave school at 18 and go and do an apprenticeship or an internship, and then, you know, learn as you work, and you still earn money. So I think look at the opportunities and see what's around.
Yeah. Did you always want to work for yourself, or did you like go, oh, I'm sick of this, I just want to work for myself?
I never even thought about it, if I'm being honest. So what happened was, John, you know, my husband, he started this business because he wasn't happy where he was, and then I was moving to live with him, and he said to me, instead of getting a job in Liverpool, why don't you come and work with me? So I kind of went into it that way. I don't know if I'd have gone on myself working, if it would ever have come to me. I mean, I was 33 when I went there, so I don't know whether I would have thought of it. I never really thought. I always just thought I was going to get promoted. So I was always looking for promotion within a business. So I'm not sure I would have done it without him.
So I started quite a lot of like trial businesses just to earn some money. I had this one business during COVID. I bought t-shirts and I customized them, and then I sold them again, and I made about £300. And I raised over £100 for charity.
Wow. What made you think of that?
I think there was this girl in my brother's class that had a brain tumour.
Right.
And she had to go all the way to America to get the surgery, but it was really expensive. So there was like the GoFundMe. Yeah. So I put everything towards that.
Wow, that's amazing. I mean, you're asking me about what did I want to run a business, and at 33 I didn't even know if I wanted to run a business, and you're running your own little business at about age 10?
Yeah.
9 even? Wow. I'm very impressed.
Thank you. Cool. Well, thank you for taking the time to talk.
Thank you for chatting with me too.
Thank you for tuning in to another enlightening episode of Changing the Conversation. If you enjoyed today's insights and want to stay connected with the latest industry trends, be sure to subscribe, rate and leave a review. Feel free to reach out to us on social media or through our website to share your thoughts and suggestions, or even to nominate someone whose contribution deserves to be heard. Until next time, this is Sarah Myers-Goff signing off from Changing the Conversation.